Some weddings change lives. This one ended them. The bride was missing. The groom was hiding a secret darker than anyone could imagine. And the woman walking down the aisle wasn't who the guests thought she was. I wasn't the bride. I wasn't even supposed to be there. But I was the only person who could expose the truth. In front of 400 witnesses. And the entire internet. This is the story of how I walked down the aisle wearing my twin sister's dress. Not to marry a man, but to destroy him. And trust me, you've never heard a wedding story like this. I'll never forget the way my twin sister Lily looked the night before her wedding. Not because she looked beautiful, although she did, in that fragile, heartbreaking way a person looks right before they shatter, but because she didn't look like herself at all. She looked like someone who had just seen the end of her own life and wasn't sure how to step back from the edge. She sat on the edge of my bathtub in my cramped downtown Seattle apartment, knees pulled up slightly, hands trembling so violently she kept knocking the faucet handle. The tiny bathroom smelled faintly of lavender soap and stress. The overhead light flickered from water damage I'd been meaning to repair, casting her pale face in uneven shadows. She wore the white silk robe the bridal party had given her that morning, soft, elegant, pristine, but the girl inside it seemed to be unraveling thread by thread. Her long hair, usually curled for Ethan's liking, hung in limp waves around her face. Her mascara had smudged into soft gray shadows under her eyes from hours of crying she insisted she hadn't done. And she kept staring at her engagement ring like it was a handcuff she didn't remember agreeing to wear. "Rose," she whispered, her voice cracking on my name. "I think I made a terrible mistake." Hearing those words from Lily, my Lily, who always tried to see the good in everyone, made something cold curl in my stomach. Lily didn't admit fear easily. She softened it, smoothed it over, painted it with optimism until it looked like something harmless. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't impulsive. So if my sister said she'd made a terrible mistake, it meant the truth was far worse than she was saying. And I had suspected something was wrong long before she did. See, from the outside, Lily and Ethan had the kind of relationship that gave Pinterest a purpose. Everyone said it. My mother. Our aunts. The women in Lily's art department. Strangers on Instagram. He treats her like a queen. He's so accomplished. He's so handsome and mature. He proposed so quickly. He must really know what he wants. They said these things like they were facts. Written in stone. Impossible to question. But I had never liked Ethan Caldwell. Not once. For months, I'd caught the little signs, the ones most people miss. The way his eyes flicked to her phone every time it buzzed. The way he always kept a hand on her shoulder, waist, back, not affectionate, but possessive, like a man holding onto a prize. The way she apologized for everything, even the weather, even silence. The way she slowly, quietly stopped making decisions without glancing at him first. I'm 9 minutes older than Lily, a fact she never lets me forget, and I've spent my whole life protecting her. When we were 8, I shoved a boy who tried to cut her ponytail because she beat him in tetherball. When we were 16, I took the blame after she accidentally scraped our mother's car against a mailbox. In college, I broke up with one of her boyfriends for her because she was too scared to tell him in person. We're identical on the outside, but built from opposite materials on the inside. She's soft. I'm steel. Lily became an elementary school art teacher. I became a private investigator. She saw the good in people. I saw the truth. So when she whispered, "I made a mistake," I knew it wasn't a small one. It was a life-altering, paradigm-shifting, earth-splitting kind of mistake. I crouched in front of her and held her cold hands. "Lily," I said softly, "what happened?" She swallowed so hard her throat clicked. Then she told me everything. She had been helping Ethan organize files on his laptop for tax season. That should have been my first clue. Tax season wasn't for months, and Ethan was too rich to do anything himself anyway. Lily said he'd been oddly nervous, oddly specific, oddly controlling about how and when things needed to be transferred. She complied. She always did. But while moving folders to an external drive, she clicked on a hidden directory labeled with a string of meaningless characters, a mistake anyone could have made. A normal guy would have had some old documents inside. Maybe photos. Maybe clutter. Not Ethan. Inside were hundreds of photos and videos. Women. Dozens of them. Strangers to Lily. Strangers to me. Some filmed in bedrooms. Some in bathrooms. Some in dressing rooms. Some unconscious. Some recorded without consent. All of them unaware. And the worst part, the part that made Lily sink onto my bathroom floor shaking, was that every single woman looked like her. Same build. Same hair. Same delicate jawline. Same profile. Same smile. Ethan didn't just cheat on Lily. He collected women who resembled her. Obsessed over them. Documented them. Cataloged them. Like a man building a museum of his fantasies. She confronted him, which shocked me because confrontation makes Lily's stomach knot. Ethan responded with tears. Begging. Promises. The whole performance. He claimed it was an addiction. A dark period of his life. He insisted therapy had helped him change, that the files were old, that he never meant to hurt her. He said marrying her was his way of becoming a better man. Classic manipulation. Classic crocodile tears. Classic abuser cycle. And Lily, being Lily, wanted to believe him. She always wants to believe people can change. But then he said something that burned through her like acid. He told her he had insurance. That if she ever left him, he'd ruin her life. That he had the money, the lawyers, the influence. That he'd make sure she never taught children again. That he'd protect himself at all costs. My sister, the kindest person I know, threatened by the man who claimed he loved her. And that's when she ran to me. She finished her story and collapsed against my chest, sobbing. The silk robe trembled with her breaths. I held her, smoothing her hair away from her face, and felt something dangerous and icy and ancient unfurl inside me. Lily, I said gently, you're not going to call off the wedding. She jerked back, eyes red, confused. What? You're not going to stand at that altar tomorrow. She blinked hard, stunned. Then who? Me, I said. I'll be there. Wearing your dress. Her mouth fell open. Rose, that's crazy. No, I said, my voice low and certain. What's crazy is letting that man trap you. What's crazy is letting him walk into that ceremony tomorrow like an innocent groom. I'm going to walk down that aisle. I'm going to say the vows. And then I'm going to ruin him in front of everyone he respects. The silence in the bathroom felt thick. Then Lily whispered, you'd do that. For you. I said, I'd do worse. The next 9 hours were a war room compressed into a cramped apartment. We planned every detail, every risk, every contingency. We began with logistics. We are identical twins, mirror images to a disturbing degree. Same honey blonde hair, same green eyes, same smile, same height and weight. Even our freckles match. We swapped places so often growing up that teachers gave up trying to tell us apart. But this wasn't swapping seats in maths class. This was infiltrating a wedding with 400 guests. We stripped everything down to basics. Underwear, perfume, shoes, nail polish, hair part, hair texture, jewelry, makeup style. I studied Lily's posture, her mannerisms, the soft tilt of her head when she was nervous, the way she tucked her hair behind her left ear but never her right. I practiced her voice a little softer, a little breathier, slightly higher than mine. I recorded her and mimicked each cadence until she nodded through tears and said, "That's scary. You sound exactly like me." Then came the darkness. Lily retrieved every password she'd memorized, every cloud account, every hidden folder name, every suspicious detail. I dug through Ethan's digital life like a surgeon dissecting corruption. The files weren't just disturbing, they were criminal. Hundreds of videos, thousands of images, conversations with men encouraging him, a second secret phone, bank records showing payouts to private investigators tracking Ethan's ex-girlfriends, GPS logs coordinating with business trips. The worst part wasn't the content. It was the organization. Color-coded, time-stamped, tagged, cataloged. A digital museum of his victims. I copied everything onto an encrypted drive no larger than a lipstick, then sent it to trusted law enforcement contacts, people I'd worked with as a PI. Good people. Honest. Angry at men like Ethan. By dawn, detectives had warrants ready. At 6 a.m., my sister and I drove north to a tiny Airbnb near the Canadian border. No cameras, no neighbors, no cell signal. I got her inside, helped her lock the door, held her as she cried into my shoulder. When she finally looked at me with swollen eyes and trembling breath, she whispered, "Please be careful." I cupped her face in my hands. "I'll come back for you," I said. "And Ethan will never hurt you again." Then I left her there, safe but shattered, and drove back to Seattle through a rising sun that felt like a beginning and an ending at the same time. By 8 a.m., I wasn't Rose anymore. I was Lily, and I was about to destroy a monster. The morning of the wedding dawned with the kind of cool Pacific Northwest air that made people want to breathe deeply and pretend their lives were peaceful. But nothing about that morning was peaceful, not for me, not for Lily, and soon, certainly not for Ethan Caldwell. As I pulled into the parking lot of the Woodinville Winery, I felt a strange duality settle over me. On the surface, I wore Lily's skin, Lily's dress, Lily's perfume. But underneath, I was all steel. I was the version of myself that only surfaces when someone threatens the one person I've loved more fiercely than myself. I wasn't walking into a wedding. I was walking into a battlefield disguised with baby's breath and imported roses. The bridal suite was buzzing when I arrived, hairstylists unzipping kits, makeup artists laying out palettes, bridesmaids squealing and clinking mimosa glasses, photographers snapping pictures of things that didn't matter. I stepped inside and let their enthusiasm wash over me like a performance. There she is. Maya, Lily's maid of honor, squealed in that excited pitch only bridesmaids can produce. She wore a pale lavender gown and had tears already brimming in her eyes. "Oh my God, Lily, you look so calm." Calm. Yes, that was the goal. I gave her a shy little smile, Lily's smile, not mine, and let her wrap me in a hug. "You ready for the best day of your life?" she asked, eyes sparkling with sincerity. If only she knew. My voice came out soft, a little breathy. "I think I am." I sat in the makeup chair while two artists went to work on my face. They dusted blush along my cheeks, curled my hair into soft waves, spritzed a floral setting mist that clung to my skin. I kept my expression exactly like Lily would have, timid, grateful, a little overwhelmed by attention. Every time someone asked if I was nervous, I smiled and nodded, letting them interpret the tremble in my hands however they wanted. When the time came to put on the dress, the room quieted. The gown hung on a padded hanger, glittering faintly under the warm lights, delicate lace patterns along the bodice, a flowing skirt, a sweeping train, a veil long enough to feel like a memory. It was breathtaking, I'll admit, and for a brief moment I wished it were meant for a better day. A better man. But this dress wasn't for love. This dress was for justice. Two bridesmaids helped me into it, tugging and adjusting until it fit perfectly. The zipper slid up the back with a soft zzz that echoed faintly in the room. When they stepped back, everyone gasped. "Oh, Lily," one whispered. "You look like a dream." I smiled again, Lily's smile, even though inside I felt like a blade tucked inside silk. The first look with Ethan was scheduled for 11:30 a.m. The photographer wanted to capture the moment he saw his bride. I stood in place, bouquet in hand, veil draped over my shoulders, trying not to let my disgust sour the expression I had practiced all night. The door opened. Ethan stepped inside. And for the first time, I saw him not through suspicion or distance, but up close, face to face, wearing the same tux he planned to wear while binding my sister to him forever. He froze. His eyes widened, softened. He inhaled sharply, as if seeing Lily in her wedding dress was some emotional climax of his life. "Lily," he whispered. A photographer's camera clicked 3 times in rapid succession. He stepped closer. His hand trembled as he reached out and brushed the veil away from Lily's face. He stared at me with what the rest of the world would interpret as love, deep, consuming love. But I didn't see love. I saw obsession, possession, delusion wearing a tuxedo. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he murmured. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, but I stayed calm, dipping my head shyly. "Thank you," I whispered in Lily's voice. He cupped my cheek, and I had to resist the urge to flinch. His thumb stroked my skin as if I were something fragile he owned. "I can't believe today is finally happening," he said. "You're mine. After today, nothing and no one will ever come between us." There it was. The truth beneath the romance. A promise. A threat. A cage wrapped in vows. I forced a small, watery smile. "I love you," I said, playing the role until the final act. "I really do." His eyes softened further. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "I'll make you so happy." "I promise." I fought the urge to wipe my skin afterward. The photographer snapped more photos, praising us, praising him, praising the moment. Ethan ate up the attention like air. I played along, smiled, leaned into his touch, let him hold my waist. But under the lace and the gentle makeup, my mind was counting seconds, calculating risk, reviewing every step of the plan I had mapped out down to the breath. This was the calm before the storm. The ceremony lawn was breathtaking, rows of white chairs, floral arches dripping with soft pink roses, a long aisle runner sprinkled with petals. Guests whispered excitedly as they took their seats. Some dabbed away happy tears, others snapped selfies with the vineyard behind them. It was the kind of setting brides dream about. If only they knew the truth. From behind the heavy doors of the bridal cottage, I could hear the faint swell of music as the string quartet began playing the prelude. The wedding planner, a tiny woman named Dara with a headset and a perpetual look of forced serenity, rushed around making last-minute adjustments. She approached me with a glowing smile. "Lily, darling, it's time." Time. Yes, but not for what she thought. I nodded softly, lowering my gaze just like Lily would have. My uncle arrived to walk me down the aisle, his eyes misty with emotion. He hugged me gently, whispering, "You look beautiful, sweetheart. Your mom would be so proud." I swallowed hard. I hated lying to him, even if it was for the right reasons. "Thank you," I whispered. The music shifted. Doors opened. The guests rose. A sea of faces turned toward me, and I stepped forward. As I walked down the aisle, Every part of me stayed in character. The soft smile, the slight tilt of the head, the delicate fingers clutching the bouquet. But inside my chest, my heart thudded like thunder. The weight of the dress felt like armor, the veil like a shield. Ethan stood at the altar, hands clasped in front of him, eyes shining with pride. Pride. That was the part that bothered me the most. He looked proud, as if he'd captured something rare. As if he had won. But this wasn't his victory. It was his sentencing. As I stepped onto the platform beside him, he squeezed my hands. "You okay?" he whispered. "Yes," I breathed, smiling sweetly. "Perfect." The officiant began her welcome speech. People settled into their seats. Cameras recorded. The world felt suspended, hanging in the fragile balance between illusion and truth. Then she asked the question. "If anyone here believes that these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace." This was it. I lifted my veil. And the world tilted. "Actually," I said, letting my voice ring through the vineyard, "I do." At first, there was confusion. Some guests gasped, others froze mid-breath. The officiant blinked, unsure how to proceed. Ethan's face flickered with confusion. His lips parted. "Sweetheart, what?" "My name," I said clearly, "is not Lily Harper." A wave of stunned whispers rippled through the crowd. "My name is Rose Harper. I'm Lily's identical twin. And the man standing next to me is not the loving fiance you all think he is. He's a predator. A man who has been recording, stalking, and exploiting women who look like my sister for years." Gasps. Cries. Shock. Ethan's face drained of color. "What are you doing?" he whispered harshly. "Lily, stop this." "I told you," I said, "I'm not Lily." I clicked the remote hidden in my bouquet. The massive projector that was supposed to show childhood photos flickered to life, and instead displayed the first image from Ethan's secret collection. A woman who looked exactly like Lily. Unconscious. On a hotel bed. A collective scream rose from the guests. The next image appeared. Then the next. And the next. People stood. People covered children's eyes. People cried. People shouted. Phones lifted everywhere, recording, streaming, calling for security, calling for justice. Ethan lunged for the remote, but I stepped aside. Two groomsmen grabbed him, confused and horrified. "This is fake," he shouted. "She's lying. Lily, tell them." I stepped close enough so he could see the truth in my face. "Lily's 200 miles away," I whispered. "And she's safe from you." His expression cracked, the mask splitting right down the middle. Then the doors burst open. 8 officers and 2 detectives entered the ceremony. Guests screamed. Ethan thrashed. And the officers grabbed him. "You are under arrest," the lead detective said, her voice loud and clear, for multiple counts of unlawful surveillance, exploitation, and interstate cybercrime. They cuffed him right there. In front of everyone. In his wedding tux. He screamed my sister's name. He screamed mine. He screamed that it was a setup, a conspiracy, a lie. But the evidence was displayed towering behind us, undeniable, inescapable. As they dragged him away, he twisted his head toward me. "You'll regret this," he shouted. I stepped forward, looked him dead in the eyes, and said softly, "No. This is the first thing I'll never regret." They dragged him out through the rows of shocked, pale guests. The ceremony was over. The wedding was over. And Ethan's life as a free man was over too. What came after was chaos wrapped in catharsis. People cried for Lily, for the women on the screen, for the horror they'd just witnessed. Maya ran to me, hugging me so fiercely she nearly ripped the veil from my head. "Oh my God," she cried, "Rose, I didn't even know. I didn't know she had a sister. I didn't know any of this." "It's okay," I whispered. It's all going to be okay. Guests came up to me, shaken, thanking me, apologizing for not noticing, asking how Lily was. The florist was sobbing into a bucket of roses. The caterer offered me an entire bottle of champagne. Someone shouted that they'd already started a GoFundMe for the victims of hidden camera abuse. It hit $100,000 in the first hour alone. The detective approached me quietly, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Your evidence gave us everything we needed," she said. "This case is going federal." He's looking at decades, Rose. Good. He deserved every second. By sundown, the wedding venue was empty except for staff whispering about the most shocking event in the winery's history. I left with a police escort and drove north, back to the little Airbnb where my real bride, my sister, waited. When I walked through the door, Lily rushed toward me. She had been pacing, crying, convinced something had gone wrong. But when she saw me still in the wedding dress, mascara smudged, hair falling from its pins, she broke. She sobbed and hugged me with a desperation I'd never felt from her before. "You're safe," I whispered, holding her tight. "It's over, Lily. He's gone." She cried harder. And for the first time in months, maybe years, she let herself breathe. I didn't sleep that first night after the wedding. Neither did Lily. Even after I brought her back from the Airbnb and tucked her into the guest room in our aunt's Montana home, she lay awake with wide, glassy eyes, staring at the ceiling as if the darkness above her still held Ethan's shadow. Every time she closed her eyes, she told me later, she saw that wedding aisle. She saw the crowd. She saw the screen. She heard Ethan screaming her name while police dragged him away in handcuffs. Trauma isn't tied neatly with a bow just because justice shows up early. But the most important thing was this. She was free. Finally, fully, undeniably free. And freedom has a strange way of settling into a person's bones. It starts small, a tremble, a breath, a quiet realization. But once it takes root, it grows. We spent the first 48 hours wrapped in a fog of exhaustion, relief, guilt, and disbelief. Lily cried off and on the entire time. Big, heaving sobs that came in waves, tears for the fear she'd lived with, tears for the women in the videos, tears for the terror of what would have happened if she'd married him, tears for the future she almost stepped into. But on the third day, something changed. I walked into the kitchen after a long, silent morning, expecting to find her curled up on the couch like before. Instead, there she stood barefoot, hair tied back, wearing one of our aunt's oversized sweaters, whisking eggs in a bowl like it was the most normal morning in the world. She looked up at me, and she smiled. Not the forced smile she had worn for Ethan. Not the shaky smile of a terrified woman. Not the hollow smile of someone trying to pretend they were okay. This smile was real. Soft. Warm. True. "I slept last night," she said quietly, almost shyly. For the first time in weeks. I walked over, leaned against the counter, and bumped her shoulder playfully. "Good. You deserve all the sleep." She looked down at the eggs, swirling them thoughtfully. "I keep thinking," she whispered, "what if you didn't believe me? What if I never opened that folder? What if he... Her voice broke. I put an arm around her, pulling her close. "Stop. You did open it. You did come to me. You survived him, Lily. That was you, not me." She shook her head fiercely. "But you saved my life." "No," I said softly but firmly. "You saved your own. I just stepped in to finish the part you couldn't." She exhaled shakily, leaning her forehead against my shoulder. I held her, wishing I could gather all the broken pieces of her inside my hands and glue them together right then and there. But healing doesn't happen on command. Still, I knew. This was the beginning. And it felt good. Over the next few weeks, The case against Ethan Caldwell hit the news like a tidal wave. Every morning, a new headline. Tech engineer arrested in elaborate hidden camera scheme. Federal charges filed in multi-state exploitation case. Dozens of victims identified in shocking digital abuse ring. The bride who wasn't. Twin sister exposes groom at wedding. Reporters camped outside Ethan's condo. News anchors debated the psychology behind his obsession. Victims came forward. A few even contacted me privately, through encrypted emails, through detective intermediaries, to thank me for exposing him. The detective assigned to the case, Marlene Jacobs, called every few days to keep us updated. She was calm, patient, steady, exactly the kind of woman you'd want on a case like this. The digital forensics team recovered more than we expected, she told me over the phone one afternoon. Dozens more folders. Hidden drives. Private servers. He had a pattern. A long-running pattern. Does Lily need to testify? I asked, glancing toward the living room where she sat sketching quietly at the dining table. Possibly later, Detective Jacobs replied. But for now, her statement is enough. And yours. What you did was dangerous, Rose. I know. You're lucky he didn't get violent. Men like him, they snap when the mask breaks. I swallowed. He didn't have the chance. No, she said, because you controlled the narrative. Don't underestimate the power in that. I didn't. And Ethan? He was denied bail. The judge called him a high-risk predator with a demonstrated pattern of manipulation, digital exploitation, and surveillance. His lawyers tried to argue he had mental health struggles, that he needed treatment, not prison. But the evidence was too overwhelming, too sickening, too undeniable. The videos alone. They spoke louder than any defense. Little by little, Lily began reclaiming pieces of herself. She returned to painting real painting, not the crafts she used for her elementary students. She painted sunsets, oceans, forest trails, twin sisters holding hands, a woman standing on a cliff with her dress blowing behind her. She cooked again. She sang in the kitchen again. She slept through the night again. And eventually, she did something I never thought she'd do, something that showed me she wasn't just surviving anymore. She cut her hair. I came home from grocery shopping to find her standing in the bathroom, bits of blonde scattered across the counter. Her once long hair was now a sharp, confident bob that framed her face like she was someone new. I stopped in the doorway, stunned. You cut it. She turned slowly, touching the ends shyly. Do you hate it? I shook my head. I love it. You look powerful. She smiled. I wanted to change something. Something big. Something he didn't choose. A lump formed in my throat. That's perfect, I whispered. She stepped closer, lifted her wrist, and showed me something else. A tiny tattoo. A simple rose outline, delicate and elegant. For you, she said. I didn't cry often. Not like Lily did. But that moment? That one hit me hard. I pulled her into a tight hug, holding her against my chest like the little girl she used to be, the one who scraped her knee and ran to me for help, the one who needed me to stand between her and every storm. Only now, the storm was gone, and she was standing stronger than I'd ever seen her. 6 months after the disastrous wedding that wasn't, the case reached its turning point. Ethan agreed to a plea deal. His lawyer called it a strategic move. The prosecution called it surrender. I called it justice. The sentence was harsh, harsher than I'd expected. 28 years in federal prison. No parole for the first 22. When I heard the news, I sat in silence for a long moment. Not because I felt sorry for him. Not because I doubted the punishment. But because I finally felt the weight lift fully, completely, permanently. And Lily. When I told her, She sat down at the kitchen table, exhaled a shaky breath, and whispered, "It's really over." "Yes," I said softly. "It is." The winery, embarrassed, horrified, and desperate to restore its reputation, reached out about 3 months after the wedding. The new manager explained that they had refunded every penny of the event and wanted to transform the ceremony site into something meaningful. "A memorial garden," she said. "One dedicated to survivors of image-based abuse. And we'd like to include your sister's name." With her permission. Lily hesitated at first. Not because she didn't appreciate the gesture, but because she didn't want her name tied to trauma forever. But when she learned the garden might help other survivors find courage, she agreed. We visited the site together on a warm September afternoon. The aisle where Ethan once stood confidently in a tux was now lined with lavender and roses. The arch where I had exposed him was wrapped in vines. Butterflies drifted through the air lazily, as if reclaiming the space. At the center stood a plaque. For Lily and all the women who looked like her. Lily touched the metal lightly, tears glistening in her eyes. But these weren't the same tears she'd cried months ago. These were tears of closure, of gratitude, of reclamation. She leaned into me and rested her head on my shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up on me." "I never have," I said. "I never will." Life didn't snap back to normal. Trauma doesn't evaporate. But Lily rebuilt herself, brick by brick, moment by moment. She returned to teaching. Her students screamed with joy when she walked back into the classroom. Mothers hugged her. Fathers thanked her. She wore brighter colors now, soft greens, warm yellows, bold reds. Colors she used to avoid because Ethan preferred her in neutrals. She laughed more. She painted more. She lived more. And one day, out of nowhere, she met someone. A firefighter from a nearby town, quiet, steady, gentle. A man who never raised his voice, never demanded anything from her, never touched her without asking first. The first time we met, he shook my hand with a respectful nod and said, "Lily talks a lot about how much she trusts you." I studied him, the way he stood, the calmness in his eyes, the kindness in his posture. I approved. And Lily blossomed in ways I hadn't seen since we were 17 and free of every burden life hadn't yet thrown our way. As for me, I went back to work. New clients found me through whispers, through articles, through the viral video that hit 180 million views and counting. Women came to me quietly, nervously, gripping their hands together as they told me about powerful men who threatened, manipulated, gaslit, stalked, harassed, controlled them. Each time I listened. Each time I believed them. Each time I fought for them. And when they doubted themselves, when they feared no one would believe them, when they felt trapped and voiceless, I showed them the video. Not the graphic clips, not the horrors, just the moment when a woman walked down an aisle in a $40,000 dress and detonated the life of the predator who thought he owned her. Justice doesn't always arrive in a courtroom. Sometimes it arrives in lace and chiffon. Sometimes in courage. Sometimes in the unwavering love of a twin who refuses to let evil win. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it, the danger, the risk, the deception, the spectacle. My answer is always the same. I would do it again. Every second. Every step. Every breath. Because justice doesn't wait for heroes. It waits for someone brave enough to act. And on that day, in that dress, in that chapel, under that veil, I was brave for both of us. Lily survived. Ethan fell. The truth won. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, justice looks exactly like your twin sister walking down the aisle to ruin a monster's life. If you enjoyed this story, Don't forget to subscribe to the Spoken Pen for more gripping tales that keep you on the edge of your seat. Make sure to like, share, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're listening from. We love hearing from our global family. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and keep listening.